Hi, I'm Eugene Mulero with Transport Topics, and joining us today is Melanie Zanona with the Hill newspaper, a transportation reporter. And Melanie, Congress is back after the Thanksgiving break, and GOP leaders are busy because they want to make sure they meet a December 9th funding deadline.
That's right.
And they're working on either a short-term measure or there's talk that perhaps they're going to do a fiscal 2017 omnibus. And we want to know what you're hearing about what's going to happen in the lame duck.
Well, it sounds like they're going for the short-term spending bill.
Okay.
So it would go through March. It would extend current levels, which we're at fiscal 2016 right now. And the reason why they're doing this is because they're very excited, the conservatives are, to not have to face the threat of Obama's veto pen for the first time in 8 years.
Yeah.
And they also want to give the incoming administration, Donald Trump, a chance to weigh in on federal spending levels, set policy. So at least, especially in the House, they're leaning towards this. Now, we're also hearing there's some senators, Republican senators, who aren't so thrilled about this idea. They're particularly worried that it's going to really gum up the schedule. There's a lot on the plate next year, so it's going to be quite the challenge to get all of this done.
That's a great point because, as Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi mentioned, if you put this funding deadline for mid-March, then you also have, you have a legislative traffic jam. If you have nominations in the Senate.
The debt ceiling, that's another issue that they're going to possibly have to deal with around the same time. Nominations, and not to mention all the other legislative things that Trump has addressed as a priority in the first 100 days. So it's going to be pretty difficult to get all those things accomplished.
So we're hearing, but we're nevertheless hearing that they're going to do the CR, this continuing resolution through March. And House Democrats authorizers on the Transportation Committee reached out to the funding leaders. What is it that exactly they were calling for?
So yesterday, they sent a letter to the appropriators and urged them to include a funding boost for transportation. Now, this funding boost was already paid for, already approved by Congress in the FAST Act, which was passed last December.
Exactly.
And it was supposed to start in fiscal 2017. It was $2.4 billion increase in spending on highway safety, public transit, by the Highway Trust Fund. But because we had the CR, we saw fiscal 2016 levels, and we didn't get the funding boost that was already provided for. So they're saying, look, we already did this. Congress approved it. It was bipartisan. Even if we do a CR, let's go ahead and see this increase included.
How receptive do you think GOP leaders are going to be to this letter?
I mean, they were aware of the issue when they did the CR last time and didn't include it, so I'm not sure there's going to be much of an impetus to do it again this time. We've also heard Donald Trump talk about his infrastructure plans, and he's committed to putting forward a package. So I think there's hope that transportation is going to get addressed next year. So why rush to do it now? And then it also kind of opens up a can of worms if you allow this increase to go forward. What other agencies and departments are going to start pushing for an anomaly to a CR?
That is a good point. Yeah. And policy writers and any policy writers that probably were going to go into an omnibus, what I'm hearing from the trucking industry is that the Trucking Association, that some of these policy writers are going to be on hold until the spring when Republican leaders take a crack at another fiscal 2017 budget shot. That's
right. I mean, one of the trucking writers that some Republicans had pushed for in the last CR was related to the hours of service rule and putting forward standards before that rule can go in place, a requirement, a study by the Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
There was a drafting error, is what they're calling it, in the last omnibus when they included the language. So they want not only to fix the technical issue and fix the drafting error, but they also want to put these standards in place, these requirements before the study can go forward. Now, it wasn't included in the last CR. Not sure it's going to get included in this CR, especially because there are some Democrats who, at least in previous spending bill debates, have said, if this is included, we're not going to support this. I'm not sure where President Obama lies on this, but it's just a reality that they still have a Democratic administration to deal with, so they might have a better chance getting it done in the new year.
Yeah, and not only trucking, but also there are infrastructure and transportation policy writers, other lawmakers wanted to inject some policy positions and additional funding for other projects. The Flint water crisis being one of them.
Well, Flint was originally included in the waterways bill, the water infrastructure bill that the House and Senate both passed their own versions. Now the House version is 170 million. The Senate version is 220 and is fully paid for and appropriates funds as opposed to authorizes it. But we're hearing that it might end up, the Flint aid that was included might end up in a CR as opposed to the water infrastructure bill. So that's something to definitely look out for as well.
So we're going to be paying attention. They got till December 9th to get some sort of funding
Not
deal
much time.
ready, I know. And you and I cover Congress. We kind of see that there's a pattern of for leaders to wait kind of maybe sometimes to the last minute to get some of these things done. Can you give us your assessment of what Trump is now talking about on infrastructure, in that, you know, he initially came out with the $1 trillion 10-year investment plan on infrastructure. Then his transition website says $550 billion, but then he meets with the New York Times and they ask him about infrastructure.
Right. Well, what he told the New York Times most recently was, it's not a core part of my agenda, it's an important part. He also said it wasn't going to be part of his jobs creation plan. So it's a little unclear exactly what he wants to put forward and how willing he is going to be to do that within the first 100 days. Like we said, there's going to be a lot on the plate. But what we do know is that he has said, you know, we need to rebuild our crumbling roads and bridges and rebuild our third world airports, as he likes to so often say, LaGuardia. But he has floated this $1 trillion infrastructure plan. What we know is it relies heavily on private financing, offering private tax credits to people who want to back these transportation projects. But Democrats have had some concerns in saying this is only going to support projects that can recoup their investment costs and like tollways and user fees. And so I think, you know, it's not going to be as bipartisan and easy as we might think.
Melanie, let's leave it there, and you can read all of Melanie's reporting on thehill.com, and check out Capitol Agenda on Tuesdays when Congress is in session. Thank you.
Thanks.